Dr. Andrew Huff's journey into the world of infectious disease research and government science began as a military veteran, transitioning subsequently to federal science roles, including work at a national nuclear laboratory in New Mexico. Proudly rooted in a scientific, engineering, and defense background, Huff eventually found himself working for EcoHealth Alliance, a nonprofit he initially assumed was akin to a wildlife conservation group. His role as vice president within EcoHealth Alliance marked a turning point, as he soon realized this organization was far removed from his initial expectations. Echoing his disillusionment, Huff recounts that EcoHealth Alliance was not, in fact, engaged in wildlife protection or disease prevention through ecological means, but rather in conducting and facilitating controversial gain-of-function research involving dangerous pathogens. His suspicions grew as he dove into technical documents and internal meetings, discovering that the declared mission was more of a facade, with darker undercurrents linking this work to U.S. intelligence operations and a controversial collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology. EcoHealth Alliance was purportedly focused on predicting and forecasting emerging infectious diseases through global biosurveillance efforts funded primarily by USAID's PREDICT program. Dr. Huff highlights that, while the organization publicly claimed to collect samples worldwide to protect humans and wildlife from pandemics, in reality, it failed to maintain rigorous scientific standards such as comprehensive sample collection or systematic data processing. Huff's expert analysis revealed PREDICT to be more akin to a bug-hunting boondoggle rather than an effective early warning system. Digging deeper, Dr. Huff exposed that the program's true core activities revolved around building a vast library of infectious disease agents, often by collecting viral samples globally and funneling them into laboratories such as those at Columbia University and the University of North Carolina. These viruses were not simply being studied to understand wildlife diseases, but were often used in gain-of-function experiments to create new, potentially more dangerous pathogens. This was a far cry from the altruistic messaging EcoHealth Alliance propagated to its funders and the general public. The podcast reveals critical flaws in the USAID-funded PREDICT program that EcoHealth Alliance ran. Dr. Huff, an expert in disease modeling and forecasting with peer-reviewed work predicting outbreaks like Zika, was deeply skeptical of PREDICT's ability to fulfill its promises. He highlighted grave deficiencies, including insufficient global sampling, uncoordinated data collection, and unrealistic expectations about predicting when and where pandemics would occur, illustrating that the program was fundamentally incapable of what it purported to achieve. Despite its lofty claims of preventing global pandemics, PREDICT failed to gather the necessary consistent, comprehensive datasets to build reliable predictive models, as Huff pointed out. This lack of rigor was troubling, especially given that millions of dollars of government funding were directed toward it. Dr. Huff expressed ethical concerns about this facade, questioning the program's legitimacy and wondering what exactly EcoHealth Alliance and its partners were truly doing. Perhaps the most explosive revelations focused on EcoHealth Alliance's controversial collaboration with the Wuhan Institute of Virology, WIV, a laboratory alleged to be at the center of SARS-CoV-2's origins. Huff explained that this relationship, which began around 2010 to 2011, was not a simple scientific exchange, but involved transfer of advanced biotechnological expertise and gain-of-function research techniques to Chinese military-linked laboratories. Remarkably, Huff disclosed that the collaboration was likely a form of scientific diplomacy serving U.S. intelligence interests, essentially a covert operation to gather information on China's bioweapons capabilities via EcoHealth Alliance. The arrangement reportedly allowed U.S. scientists and agencies indirect access to WIV, while China gained technology and know-how. This symbiotic yet dangerous relationship, veiled by political and scientific cover stories, is implicated by Huff as central to the eventual emergence of COVID-19. Dr. Huff offered compelling insights into the murky narrative surrounding COVID-19's origins, vehemently disputing the natural emergence theory that dominated early discourse. Using his expertise, he debunked the idea that SARS-CoV-2 originated from the Wuhan seafood market, pointing out that it was primarily a fish market, not dealing with mammals, an argument often overlooked by the mainstream narrative. Huff detailed the psychological operations and misinformation campaigns orchestrated by entities including EcoHealth Alliance's Peter Daszak, who was paradoxically placed on the WHO team investigating the outbreak's origins. These maneuvers deliberately obscured the lab leak theory, promoted false narratives, and silenced whistleblowers like Huff himself. He saw this as a blatant manipulation designed to protect powerful interests, preserve funding channels, and avoid accountability. A core theme of the podcast centered on the controversial gain-of-function (GOF) research the EcoHealth Alliance and its collaborators pursued, particularly at WIV. Huff emphasized that GOF inherently poses extreme risks since it involves modifying pathogens to enhance transmissibility or lethality, an area fraught with ethical and safety concerns. He continued to dismantle the common justification that GOF is necessary to predict and prepare for future pandemics, calling such claims scientific fraud. Predicting viral mutations or pandemic potential from modified genetic sequences is beyond current scientific capability, making GOF not just dangerous, but scientifically unsound. Huff also described how entities like Dr. Anthony Fauci were unfairly singled out, while earlier and wider networks, including EcoHealth Alliance and U.S. government agencies, had orchestrated and funded much of the risky research collaboration with China. The role of U.S. intelligence agencies, particularly the CIA and FBI, surfaced repeatedly as intertwined with EcoHealth Alliance's activities. Dr. Huff's experience exposed how scientific research was leveraged for espionage, with EcoHealth acting as a proxy for intelligence gathering under the guise of disease surveillance. He recounted conversations where EcoHealth's leadership liaised with the CIA and other agencies, revealing a complicated dance of covert collaboration and mutual gain. Despite the apparent connections, accountability was scant and intelligence outcomes questionable. Instead, Huff himself became a target of surveillance and intimidation, highlighting how whistleblowers are silenced or discredited to preserve the secrecy surrounding such operations. After publicly challenging the official COVID-19 narrative, Dr. Huff became the subject of intense government harassment and surveillance. His rural home was frequently infiltrated by law enforcement operatives, vehicles shadowed his movements, his devices were hacked repeatedly, and his family's safety compromised, including being tased dogs and threats to his pets. Despite reporting these incidents to the FBI and hiring private investigators, the harassment persisted with little consequence for perpetrators. Huff framed this as a classic counterintelligence tactic, aimed at discrediting and isolating him through psychological operations, intimidation, and false rumor-mongering. Yet, driven by conviction and expertise, Huff persevered in exposing the truth. The podcast revealed how media outlets such as the New York Post and Daily Mail, allegedly influenced by intelligence agencies and pharmaceutical interests, carried disinformation campaigns to attack whistleblowers like Huff. False narratives painted him as dishonest or crazy, deliberately distorting facts to undermine his credibility. This coordinated media disinformation served dual purposes, protecting the pharmaceutical industry's vaccine efforts and suppressing inconvenient origins theories. Huff's story exemplified how scientific dissent is quashed and how media narratives often align with government messaging rather than independent investigation, contributing to widespread public confusion and mistrust. Looking beyond COVID-19, Dr. Huff painted a sobering picture of emerging biotechnologies, particularly synthetic biology, intertwined with nanotechnology and artificial intelligence. He described recent advances that allow for creation of synthetic life forms capable of self-replication, adaptation, and complex behaviors controlled by embedded nanoscale AI. He warned of the potentially catastrophic dual-use applications of these technologies, from precisely targeted biological agents attacking specific human genetic populations or ecosystems to mechanical destruction of infrastructure through biological corrosives. Such capabilities, Huff argued, exceed previous bioweapons and pose unprecedented challenges, requiring urgent scientific and policy responses.